Should one quit their job to start up? This question may seem irrelevant to a lot of people who are starting up as students, but is extremely relevant to someone who is already at a job, making a living, has a family to support, probably has EMIs to pay, and is now wondering, should I quit this job to start up? Startups are tough, and in the short to medium term, it will stress your personal finances like nothing else. That is a given. You could prepare for it, you could build a buffer, and as some of you are thinking, can I continue my job until my startup shows some success? Well, that's a question we will answer today. But I should mention that wherever we meet startups and founder finances, it is an emotionally very relevant topic for me, and I constantly see founders making mistakes which I hope they avoided. The number one on my list is taking a debt to start up. But anyway, that's not what we are talking about today. The question is, should you quit your job to start up? For the purpose of this video, we will analyze this question from several angles, and I will give you some running thoughts and a strong opinion at the end of this video. If things go well, I will also give you some industry opinion from a VC, but hold for that towards the end of the video. For the purpose of this video, one thing that I am assuming that when you refer to a startup, you are talking about a serious venture. It may be something which will raise funding or might be bootstrapped. That is fine. But you are talking about a serious venture which you want to create as a business and intend to create wealth for yourself. If you are thinking of a freelancing gig or a side hustle or something which is more part-time or small in nature and will remain so, then probably this is not what I have in mind when I say a startup. The first concept which I assume you would be familiar with, I call it the personal runway. What is your personal runway when you are starting up? Now it is assumed that your business is new, it does not have any revenue on day one, and as a result, if you quit your job or if you stop your steady state income, what is the savings that you have in your bank which can support you? Is it something that will support you for 12 months, 6 months, 18 months? That's something you need to figure. The length is what I call a personal runway. This is in addition to capital that you may need to put into your business. It may be to rent an office space, to make early hires, to travel for business development, for tools that you need to purchase, for server you need to pay. It could be anything. So there are business expenses which I am separating from your personal runway, and I would strongly recommend to separate these out on day one. Be very clear what is your personal money and what is the business money, even if it is just you alone running the business. Sometime in the future, when you are running your startup and you have quit your job and you do not have a fixed source of income like a salary, your business or your startup has to pay you a salary at some point. It could come in the form of a salary, it could come in the form of dividends, it could come in the form of profit share, it could come in many ways. But this business has to pay you. And at what point should this business pay you? That is important to decide. And this moment when your business or your startup can start paying you back is when your personal runway depletion stops. And then there is a path hopefully to wealth creation. I have a strong opinion on founders paying themselves while running their business. But before we get to that, let's just break this dilemma into two parts. First, if you are quitting your job to start a business, what is the practical thing to do? What is the most practical thing that you can do? The second is, what is the right thing to do for your business to actually succeed? You do not want to make a compromise on day one that sets up your business for failure. And let's examine both of this. First up, the practical point. The most practical aspect is that startups do not die. Startups implode. And the number one reason for startups imploding in my mind is that a founder gives up. So for you to be comfortable running the business and not give up, what amount is comfortable enough? You have to get to that point as soon as possible. When I was running Price Baba, I think there is one big mistake I made and I should have done something else. I paid myself somewhere between 30,000 rupees to 50,000 rupees depending which year it is, even after we were funded and we had some revenues. And this meant that I ran at a shoestring budget. I would think before taking a cab for a meeting or hanging out over drinks with other founders to network, because the cost would always run on my mind. And it is something which in hindsight was an easy fix. I would rather have one less person on the team, or I would rather shorten my runway for the business by a little, but pay myself a little more. I will probably go back and pay myself 60,000 or 70,000 rupees per month and do the same for my co-founder, so that we can be a little more at ease, probably not build a huge saving, but comfortably meet our cost of living in Bombay and being functional. That's the practical aspect of it. What are your short-term chances of success? But how well are you setting yourself for long-term success? And that's why the first thing I said in the start is do not take a debt. The right thing to do for your business to succeed, what would that be? Can you really run a startup or a real business while doing a job? I don't think so. In fact, I once read something by Tom Peters. It said it is hard to run one business at a time. Forget running two. So in essence, I am saying is that you almost certainly need to quit your job to start up. You may tinker with ideas, you may validate your idea or build conviction about starting this business or taking the plunge. But I wouldn't call it really taking a plunge or starting up until you have given up your day job. And we will come to some practicality around it. But think about this. Dave McClure's definition of what a startup is basically talks about a startup is a company that is confused about what is its product, who its customers are, and how to make money. And the moment you answer these three questions, you are essentially a business and not a startup. There is this whole game called product market fit, or the discovery of product market fit, which is what a startup is often about. So by definition, a startup involves uncertainty about what your business will become, and hence it is a journey. You can't possibly be going through this journey while still having a full-time job. In fact, I'll read you another tweet by Reid Hoffman, which I found even more opinionated. It says, I believe starting a company is like jumping off a cliff and assembling a plane on the way down. Your willingness to jump is your most valuable asset as an entrepreneur. This is why I think it's completely fair for a lot of investors to say that I will not touch an idea or a startup if the founder is still at a full-time job somewhere. Though I have seen enough VCs message and chase interesting founders or executives at successful startups after they quit their job. Hey, I want to fund your next idea. Can I give you your first check? That happens very often, purely on conviction that this person will do something good. But I have rarely seen investors go behind someone and say, hey, you're doing this job, but you have this idea, take this check from me. That would be a relationship-driven thing. You have to be a celebrity to do that. Aam Aadmi, Aam Janta, common people like us, that's not happening. I have another point around this. I believe work for me is a duty. And if I am drawing a salary from someone, I owe it to my salary that I will give my full commitment to that job. And I do not know a lot of employers who may be okay with me running a startup on the side or doing a side hustle with the intention to run that business full time someday and quit this job. That in my mind immediately disqualifies me from having any growth over here at this job. And think about it. If you are running a startup, you are paying someone well, someone qualified, and you are counting on them to help you succeed in your business. And will you be okay if they are running a side hustle on the side and then thinking the moment that succeeds, I will go away and run that? That just can't happen. How is that authentic, and how is it that we are okay doing that? I have seen a lot of cases where people start up and they take on consulting gigs or they take on some assignments which will keep the lights on. And I can understand that. I have had to do that as well. Did I like doing it? No. Did I have to do it? Yes. Will I do it again? Ideally not. But at least over there I am clear that I am taking this assignment. I will deliver you some value. It may be my time or maybe an output. I may deliver it or my team may deliver it. But it helps me keep the lights on and run my startup. At times, especially in a bootstrapped company, it is an okay compromise. I find that to be acceptable at some levels. But there is also this entirely different debate that can you run a services and a product firm together, and we'll touch that some other day. But should you quit your job to do a startup? Of course, when you're talking about doing a startup or creating a serious business, it is inherently a risk that you have to take. You can prepare for it, don't take a debt, have a good personal runway, go and look for angel investors on day one, do all of that, sure. Pay yourself from day one if you can, if your funding permits. Pay a little, but pay yourself. That is also fine. But doing a job and also running a startup, for me, does not fly. I also asked Arpit Agarwal of Bloom Ventures about his opinion on this subject.
The question is, when you are choosing to start up in a narrow definition of venture capital oriented business, when you are narrowly defining the list of startups which are highly scaled companies which in 10 years will become listed companies with $2 billion market cap and so on, that requires you more than 100% of your time and will require you to suffer intense sacrifices for first 3 years of your life, and by design it will feel very, very risky, and nothing would be known about this because it will be highly ambiguous and highly uncertain. In that narrow definition of startups, if your heart is not fully into it, because it is going to be so hard, you will very quickly move on. You may be deluding yourself in believing that you are so smart that even 20% of your time can create 100% of value. But you know for a fact that you have to be self-aware that there are enough people in the world who are committing 100% of their time, probably more than 100%, and are as smart as you are, and still not able to create the value that you think you can create 20% of it. It is like someone saying, I will do 3 startups at a time because I have too many ideas and too much energy. You and I both know at least one person like that. And this challenge will always come in the door because you will never be able to do as good a job as a Deepinder can, because he was rock solid behind one thing. And he only talk about Deepinder is probably 1 in 10,000 people who are the same caliber at the same time who started up, and 9,999 people to become a CEO.
Well, Arpit's pretty much out there. He's been helping startups as Head Start and has funded a lot of them as Bloom, a lot of successful ones, and he meets hundreds of startups each month. So I give you what he says as it is, however you interpret it. I'll tell you a story about a unicorn founder who, by nature of running this large startup, being popular, got sweat equity, free equity in a startup. And that startup managed to exit and it made him a few crores. Now he told me that he felt that he got this equity and this money because he was founder of a popular company, of a popular startup. And he went back and split that money with his 2 other co-founders. And going forward, what he always did is he invested money to take equity in a startup, but not accept free equity. And I find that to be a very honorable thing to do. I don't think many of these stories are public and many of these dilemmas and discussions are public. And I hope someday I can get these folks on the channel to talk about these things. And I hope you will also continue this discussion with me on Twitter, in the comments box, wherever it be.